welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at some, well, pretty dramatic source material.
Very dramatic.
It connects global conflict, specifically a predicted World War III, directly to how the global financial system actually works, or maybe how it's designed to fail.
That's the core thesis, really. Our mission today is to unpack this idea presented in the sources, that WW3 isn't some random event. It's argued here as necessary.
Necessary. Necessary for what?
Necessary to allow the current U.S.-led financial system to collapse as planned, and then to, well, transfer power to a new global player.
Okay, planned collapse. That's a huge claim. And the sources are specific about timing, aren't they? They're not talking decades away.
No, not at all. The time frame suggested is incredibly soon, potentially kicking off between 2025 and 2030.
And 2025 is specifically mentioned as a potential start for the full-scale conflict part of this.
That's what some of the analysis points towards, yes. And the reason for this urgency, this ticking clock, comes down to what the sources call a fundamental flaw, a hidden, inherent flaw in all modern financial systems. It's the constant printing of money.
Let's clarify that hidden printing, we don't mean literal presses running overtime necessarily, right? It's more systemic.
Exactly. It's not always physical cash. When nations ditch the gold standard, they went to fiat currencies.
Right.
And the core design, the flaw, is that central banks can essentially create money out of nothing, usually through debt, quantitative easing, things like that. But the result is the same as running the presses. You dilute the value of all the money already out there.
So it guarantees decay. The system eats itself, basically.
It guarantees eventual collapse. It's baked into the cake, ensuring every system has an expiry date.
So if decay is built in, let's talk about the pattern. The sources point to a historical cycle for these financial empires.
Yes, and it's surprisingly consistent, according to this data. Controlling the world's main financial plumbing, so to speak, seems to last roughly 100 years, give or take.
Okay, 100 years. Let's look at the history provided.
Well, take the Netherlands back in the 17th century. Their system, think of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC.
Okay.
They had immense power, could issue debt, essentially print money without real limits for a while. That dominance lasted about 80 years. Then it faltered.
80 years. And then France.
France followed. Their system held sway for about 95 years. Again, similar story, unbacked currency creation, eventually it buckles.
And then the big one, the British pound sterling.
Right, the UK system. That lasted longer, just over a century, maybe 105 years. But the key thing here is how it ended.
World wars.
Exactly. The sheer cost, the incredible debt needed to fund World War I and World War II, that's what broke the pound's dominance.
And that created the vacuum for the U.S. dollar to step in after World War II at Bretton Woods.
Precisely. And this is the historical point the sources hammer home.
Yeah.
These transfers of financial power, they aren't peaceful handovers.
No quiet negotiations in a back room.
No. They seem to require massive disruption, economic chaos, and historically that's meant major wars.
So the collapse of the old system is kind of a prerequisite for the new one to rise.
That's the pattern suggested. But just looking at the lifespan, that 100-year mark keeps coming up.
Which brings us right up to today, the U.S. dollar system. We need to apply that cycle.
Okay, so the key date is the founding of the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Fed. That was 1913.
1913. So if we count forward to, say, 2025?
You get 112 years.
112. So well past that 100-year average lifespan.
According to the historical cycle presented, yes, it's overdue. The system is, in their words, ready to crash, structurally unsound.
And there was a specific moment, wasn't there? A point of no return mentioned in the material. 1971.
The Nixon shock. Absolutely pivotal moment, according to this analysis.
Right, when President Nixon basically said the U.S. dollar would no longer be backed by gold.
Correct. He severed that final link. The dollar became pure fiat currency.
Which meant?
It could be created without limit, printed endlessly. The sources use pretty strong language, like tissue paper.
Okay, so the idea is, even back then, the financial elites, as the sources call them, knew this move set the dollar on a countdown to collapse.
That's the claim. It was a known risk, a built-in obsolescence.
Which brings us back to the really startling question. If the dollar is going to collapse anyway because of debt and this printing, why the need for a world war? Why can't it just fizzle out and be replaced?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe $1 trillion now.
Probably.
The argument presented is deeply cynical. It says war provides the necessary physical destruction and, crucially, the overwhelming debt needed to completely wipe out the old power's infrastructure and influence.
So small conflicts don't cut it,
Apparently not. Just like the World Wars dismantled Britain's economic power.
allowing the U.S. to rise.
The sources argue a conflict on the scale of WW3 is needed to clear the path by destroying U.S. dollar dominance.
And this is where the idea of the elites comes in strongly. The sources suggest it's the same group pulling the strings, regardless of which country is nominally on top.
Yes, this is a central pillar of the argument, that the real owners of the financial system, the ultimate beneficiaries, remain constant.
So they control the Bank of England, they control the Fed.
And they'll control whatever comes next. According to this view, they do not care if it's London, Washington, or Beijing issuing the currency.
As long as they control the printing press itself.
Precisely. For them, a world war is just, well, a messy but necessary step in replacing a worn-out machine, the Fed, with a shiny new one. It paints a picture where finance, not politics, truly runs the world.
So if the U.S. system is slated for destruction via war, who's lined up to take over, the sources name China very clearly.
They do, and they argue this wasn't an accident of economic growth, it was cultivated.
How so? When did this cultivation start?
Almost immediately after the Nixon shock, according to the material. The idea is once the dollar was set on its path to failure in '71, the architects needed to start building the replacement.
And this connects to Nixon's visit to China in 1972. That seems incredibly fast.
It does.
Yeah.
But the sources claim this wasn't just political detente. They argue Nixon, despite his public stance against communist China, was essentially sent by these financial powers.
Sent to do what?
To make a deal. Convince Mao Zedong to open China up.
Okay.
And in return, massive financial backing, investment, and crucially, the transfer of U.S. technology and manufacturing know-how, entire industries.
Wow. So basically an agreement to deindustrialize the U.S. and build up China.
That's the start claim that Mao agreed in '72, and this is the hidden engine behind China's so-called economic miracle.
It wasn't organic growth alone. It was fueled intentionally.
Deliberately fueled, yes. Massive capital injections orchestrated by these elites to groom China to be the next global financial hub, the next base for the money printing press.
And the infrastructure for this new Chinese-led system, is it ready? The sources suggest it's already being put in place.
Yes, several pieces are highlighted. First, the digital yuan.
China's central bank digital currency,
Yeah.
the CBDC.
Exactly. They've developed and rolled it out before the U.S. has a fully operational equivalent. The prediction is this digital yuan becomes the core of the next global currency system.
Okay, that's one piece. What else?
Second, you have the BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now others joining.
Right, they've been openly talking about alternatives to the dollar.
They're actively building a joint currency system designed specifically to function outside the U.S. dollar framework. It's being prepared for the post-dollar world.
And the third element, does it involve gold? The cycle seems to start with gold.
It does. The sources predict that, following the historical playbook, this new BRICS digital yuan system won't launch purely on trust.
It needs backing initially.
Yes. It will likely launch with some form of gold backing or be heavily linked to gold reserves, at least at the beginning. To establish credibility and global trust, especially after the chaos expected from the dollar's collapse. It's the classic move to stabilize things before,
Before the next 100-year cycle of printing and decay inevitably starts all over again.
Precisely. New players, same game, according to this view.
Okay, let's pull back from the grand historical sweep for a moment and focus on right now. The sources insist there are immediate warning signs, things you can see happening that signal the current system is, well, on its last legs.
Yes, two really prominent signals that the engine is sputtering, about to seize.
What's the first one?
Extreme inflation. Now, everyone's felt prices going up since, say, 2020. That's undeniable.
Right.
But the sources warn that the inflation just before this predicted conflict kicks off, it will be much, much worse. Many times faster is the phrase used.
Faster than what we've seen recently. Why would it accelerate so dramatically right at the end?
Well, think about it. If the system is truly dying, what's the last resort for the authorities, for the central bank?
Keep printing money faster and faster to paper over the cracks.
Exactly. Print exponentially just to keep things afloat for another day, another week. It's a sign of losing control.
So that runaway inflation isn't just a problem, it's a symptom of the final stage.
It's presented as the definitive signal that the dollar is in its terminal phase. Inflation stops being gradual and becomes an existential crisis for ordinary people's savings almost overnight.
Okay, that's a sobering thought. What's the second major sign?
Manic, almost panicked money printing and distribution. Giving money away directly.
Like the COVID stimulus checks we saw globally.
That's cited as an early example, yes. But the sources also point to things happening now, like Thailand's plan for a large digital cash handout, that 10,000 Bolt scheme.
And why is helicopter money, just dropping cash on people, a sign of terminal decline? What does it signify?
It signals that the currency is losing value so rapidly that the government is resorting to essentially bribing the population to stave off immediate unrest, or desperately trying to juice demand when the underlying economy is failing.
So it's sacrificing long-term currency stability for short-term relief or stimulus.
Precisely. That kind of erratic behavior, throwing purchasing power out the window, it's seen historically as a clear indicator that confidence in the system itself is collapsing, the system is about to expire.
Okay, let's try to wrap our heads around the whole picture painted by these sources. It's a lot.
It is.
We have this 100-year cycle of financial systems decaying. The U.S. dollar, born in 1913, is now well past its sell-by date, especially after the Nixon shock in '71 cut it loose from gold.
Then you have the rise of China, allegedly orchestrated, ready with the digital yuan and the BRICS alternative system, likely gold-backed at launch.
And the linchpin, the most disturbing part, is the insistence that a massive global conflict, WW3, is not just likely but required to finalize this power shift, to destroy the old before the new can fully take over.
It's a very detailed, if deeply unsettling forecast, and the core message from these sources to you, the listener, is pretty direct.
Which is?
Look past the surface politics. Understand that the real power, according to this view, lies with the financial interests, the elites who allegedly run the world. And prepare personally. The sources strongly emphasize holding tangible assets, specifically mentioning gold, as a way to potentially protect yourself during the expected currency collapse and turbulence.
It certainly makes you look at world events, at inflation, at geopolitical tensions through a completely different lens if the underlying driver is this predictable financial cycle.
Right. It suggests the conflicts we see might be symptoms or even tools of a much deeper financial game being played out.
So the final thought here, the really provocative takeaway from this material.
I think it's the conclusion that if this prediction holds true, the coming conflict will obviously be a defining moment in history, utterly catastrophic. But the coldest, hardest reason for it, according to this analysis, isn't ideology or territory or politics in the way we usually think of them.
It's money.
It's purely about financial power. The argument is that the power of money doesn't just influence wars, it actively creates and orchestrates them to maintain its own control across eras. That's certainly something to think about.